The cold darkness of the root cellar had become her world. But Rebecca Nelson never stopped believing someone would hear her desperate cries. The spring of 1876 in Winnemucca, Nevada had started with promise until the day she found herself trapped beneath the earth, abandoned by those she trusted most, with nothing but the sound of her own terrified voice echoing against dirt walls. Rebecca had arrived in Winnemucca just 3 months prior, stepping off the stagecoach with 2 trunks and dreams as vast as the Nevada sky. At 22, she had left behind the comforts of her family's home in Philadelphia after her father's unexpected death left them nearly destitute. The advertisement seeking a schoolteacher in the growing western town had seemed like Providence a chance to support herself and her mother back east while building a new life. The townspeople had welcomed her warmly enough, though she quickly discovered that Winnemucca wasn't quite the civilized outpost the advertisements had promised. The small schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, and her accommodations, a modest room above the general store, were simple but adequate. Rebecca had thrown herself into teaching the town's children, finding unexpected joy in their eagerness to learn despite the hardships of frontier life. That had been before she witnessed something she shouldn't have. Now, as she huddled in the damp darkness of the root cellar beneath the abandoned Holloway farm at the edge of town, Rebecca tried to keep track of the days. 3, 4. The hours blended together in a terrifying haze of hunger, thirst, and desperation. She had screamed until her voice gave out, pounded on the heavy wooden door until her hands were raw, and finally collapsed into a corner, conserving what little strength remained. The Holloway place had been empty since Old Man Holloway died the previous winter, his children having long since moved to California. Rebecca had been walking home from the schoolhouse, taking the longer route that skirted the edge of town to enjoy the sunset, when she noticed unusual activity at the abandoned property. Sheriff Daniels and 3 other men, including Mayor Harris, were unloading crates from a wagon into the barn. Curiosity had gotten the better of her. Rebecca had crept closer, keeping to the shadows of the cottonwoods that lined the property. The men were arguing, their voices carrying on the evening breeze. "This is the last time," the sheriff had said, his face flushed with anger. "The risk is too great." "Don't be a coward," Mayor Harris had replied. "There's too much money at stake to back out now." When one of the men opened a crate, revealing gleaming rifles, clearly government issue, Rebecca had understood immediately. They were stealing army supplies and selling them, possibly to the mining companies or even worse, to hostile tribes. She had stepped back, a twig snapping beneath her boot. The sound had been enough. Within moments, rough hands grabbed her, dragging her toward the house despite her struggles. They had thrown her down the cellar steps, slamming the heavy wooden door and sliding the bolt into place. "What do we do with her now?" one of the men had asked, his voice muffled through the door. "Leave her," the sheriff had replied coldly. "No one knows she's here. We'll be long gone with our money before anyone misses the schoolteacher." Now, in her 4th, or was it 5th, day of captivity, Rebecca had almost given up hope. She had found an old water bucket with a few inches of stagnant rainwater that had sustained her thus far, and had managed to find a few wizened potatoes and onions in the dirt-floored cellar. But her strength was failing. The darkness pressed against her like a physical weight, broken only by thin slivers of light through the cracks in the cellar door during daylight hours. When she heard hoofbeats outside, Rebecca thought she might be hallucinating. She strained to listen, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. The sound grew louder, definitely a horse approaching the abandoned farm. With the last of her strength, she crawled to the door and began to pound on the rough wood. "Help!" she cried, her voice a ragged whisper. "Please help me! The hoofbeats stopped. Rebecca held her breath, listening intently. Then came the sound of boot heels on the wooden porch above, followed by heavy footsteps moving around the property. "Hello," called a man's voice. "Anyone here?" Rebecca pounded harder. "Down here in the cellar, please." The footsteps stopped, then quickly approached the cellar door. "Madam." "You in there?" "Yes," Rebecca sobbed with relief. "I'm locked in. Please help me." There was a moment of silence, then the sound of something heavy being dragged across the cellar doors. "Stand back, madam," the voice called. "I'm going to break this lock." Rebecca scrambled away from the door just as a thunderous crack split the air. Sunlight suddenly flooded the cellar as the doors flew open, momentarily blinding her after days in darkness. Shielding her eyes, she could make out only the silhouette of a tall man against the bright blue Nevada sky. "Good Lord," the man muttered, quickly descending the dirt steps. "Are you hurt, madam?" As her eyes adjusted, Rebecca could see him more clearly, tall and broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair beneath a well-worn hat, a strong jaw shadowed with several days' worth of beard, and the kindest blue eyes she'd ever seen. He wore the dust-covered clothes of a cowboy, denim pants, a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up revealing tanned, muscular forearms, and a bandana tied loosely around his neck. I think I'm all right," Rebecca managed, though she swayed unsteadily as she tried to stand. The cowboy reached her in 2 long strides, catching her before she collapsed. "Easy now," he said gently. "You look like you've been down here a while." "Days," Rebecca whispered, clutching his shirt for support. "They locked me in here to die." His expression hardened. "Who did?" "The sheriff," she said, the words still sounding impossible even to her own ears. "And Mayor Harris. They're stealing army supplies, selling them. I saw them." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "That explains a few things," he muttered, almost to himself. Then more gently, "Can you tell me your name, madam?" "Rebecca Nelson," she replied, her voice stronger now. "I'm the schoolteacher in Winnemucca." "Well, Miss Nelson, I'm Adam Jameson," he said, supporting her as they moved toward the steps, "and it seems we have a lot to talk about. But first, let's get you somewhere safe and get some food and water in you." Rebecca nodded gratefully, allowing him to help her up the cellar stairs and into the blinding afternoon sunlight. The fresh air filled her lungs, making her dizzy with relief. Adam guided her to a large chestnut gelding tethered to the porch rail. "Can you ride?" he asked, concern etching his features. "Yes," Rebecca said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. In her weakened state, she wasn't sure of anything. Adam seemed to understand. "You'll ride with me then," he decided, helping her onto the horse before swinging up behind her. "I've got a place about 5 miles from here. It's not fancy, but it's safe." As they rode away from the Holloway farm, Rebecca leaned back against Adam's solid chest, too exhausted to maintain her usual propriety. "Why were you there?" she asked quietly. "At the farm?" Adam was silent for a moment. "I've been tracking some missing army supplies for a friend at Fort McDermott," he finally said. "Trail led me here. Wasn't expecting to find anyone alive at that old place, much less the town schoolteacher." Rebecca closed her eyes, the gentle rocking motion of the horse and Adam's strong arms around her making her feel safe for the first time in days. "Thank God you found me," she murmured. "Rest now," Adam said softly. "You're safe." As consciousness slipped away, Rebecca had the strange feeling that her life had irrevocably changed, and not just because of her ordeal in the cellar. There was something about this quiet cowboy that stirred feelings she'd never expected to encounter in the wilds of Nevada. Adam felt the exact moment Rebecca fell asleep against him, her body going slack with exhaustion. He adjusted his hold, pulling her more securely against his chest, as he urged the horse into a faster trot. The poor woman had clearly been through hell, and his blood boiled at the thought of the town's own sheriff and mayor leaving her to die in that cellar. His cabin came into view as they crested a small rise, a modest but sturdy structure nestled against the foothills with a corral and small barn nearby. It wasn't much, but he'd built it with his own hands after leaving Texas 3 years ago, seeking a fresh start after the war and all that came after. Rebecca stirred as he reined in the horse. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "My place," Adam replied, dismounting before reaching up to help her down. "You need to rest and recover before we figure out what to do next." Rebecca's legs buckled when her feet touched the ground, and Adam caught her easily, lifting her into his arms. She was alarmingly light, her frame delicate against him. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "I'm sure you can, Miss Nelson, but not today," Adam said, carrying her to the cabin door, which he pushed open with his boot. The interior was simple but neat: a main room with a stone fireplace, wooden table with 2 chairs, a small cooking area, and a curtained-off section that presumably contained a bed. The walls were decorated with a few framed sketches of Western landscapes, and a bookshelf held an impressive collection of volumes for a bachelor cowboy's cabin. Adam gently set Rebecca on the room's only armchair. "Let me get you some water and food," he said, moving to the kitchen area. Rebecca's eyes traveled around the cabin, taking in the unexpected touches that spoke of refinement: the books, the artwork, the surprising cleanliness. "You live here alone?" she asked. Adam nodded, pumping water into a cup from the indoor pump, a luxury in these parts. "Just me," he confirmed. "Though I've a hand who helps with the cattle. Diego stays in the bunkhouse by the corral." He brought her the water, which she drank gratefully, and then busied himself stoking the fire and putting a pot of beans and salt pork to heat. As he worked, Rebecca studied him more closely. There was an ease to his movements, a quiet confidence that suggested he was a man comfortable in his own skin. Yet there was something in his eyes, a shadow of past pain, perhaps, that resonated with her. "Mr. Jameson," she began. "Adam," he corrected gently. "Adam," Rebecca said, the name feeling strangely intimate on her tongue. "I need to go back to town, to report what I saw. Those men left you to die," Adam interrupted, his voice hard. "And they're the law in Winnemucca. Going back now would only put you in danger again." "But I can't just—" "You can and you will," he said firmly, setting a plate of food before her. "At least until we have a plan. Eat now. You need your strength." Rebecca wanted to argue further, but the smell of the food overwhelmed her resolve. She ate slowly at first, then with increasing hunger as her body demanded nourishment after days of near starvation. Adam watched her with concern, noting how her hands trembled slightly. "When you're done eating, you can rest in my bed," he said, nodding toward the curtained area. "I'll take the chair." Rebecca paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "I couldn't possibly take your bed." Adam's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Miss Nelson, you've spent days in a root cellar. I think you've earned a proper rest. Besides," he added, his expression growing serious again, "you're still weak. You need real sleep to recover." Rebecca couldn't argue with that logic, though the impropriety of the situation wasn't lost on her. Still, these were hardly normal circumstances. "Thank you," she said simply. After she'd eaten her fill, Adam showed her to the curtained area, where a surprisingly large bed with a quilt and clean linens awaited. "There's a wash basin there," he said, pointing to a small table. "I'll give you privacy to clean up. Just call if you need anything." Rebecca waited until he'd drawn the curtain before sinking onto the bed, overcome with gratitude and exhaustion. She managed to wash her face and hands with the cool water in the basin. the simple act bringing tears to her eyes after days without such basic comforts. Then, without even removing her dirt-stained dress, she lay down on the bed and was asleep within moments. When Rebecca awoke, sunlight was streaming through the small window beside the bed. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The feel of the clean sheets and soft mattress beneath her was so far removed from the hard, packed dirt of the root cellar that she wondered if her rescue had been a dream. Then she heard movement beyond the curtain, the quiet clink of dishes, the sound of a door opening and closing, and remembered. Adam Jameson, the cowboy who had heard her cries and broken her out of her prison. Rebecca sat up slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her body. Her dress was hopelessly wrinkled and stained, her hair a tangled mess. She felt a pang of embarrassment at her appearance, then immediately chided herself for such vanity after what she'd been through. Drawing the curtain aside, she found Adam at the stove, cooking something that smelled gloriously of eggs and coffee. He turned at the sound of the curtain, his expression warming when he saw her. "Good morning," he said. "Or rather, good afternoon. You've been asleep for nearly 18 hours. Rebecca's eyes widened. 18 hours, Adam nodded. Your body needed it. He gestured to a steaming cup on the table. Coffee's hot if you'd like some. Rebecca moved to the table, gratefully accepting the cup. Thank you, she said, taking a sip of the strong brew, for everything. Adam shrugged, turning back to the stove. Anyone would have done the same. No, Rebecca said softly. They wouldn't have. Most would have ridden on by, not wanting to get involved. Adam was quiet for a moment, then said, While you were sleeping, I sent Diego into town to gather information. He's back now. Rebecca set down her cup, suddenly alert. What did he find out? Adam brought 2 plates of eggs and bacon to the table, sitting across from her. They're looking for you, he said grimly. Sheriff's put it out that you stole money from the school fund and ran off. He's got a posse ready to bring you to justice if you show your face. Rebecca paled. That's ridiculous. I would never, I know, Adam said, his voice gentle but firm. But it means they're desperate. They're covering their tracks, making sure no one would believe you if you tried to tell what you saw. Rebecca pushed her food around her plate, her appetite suddenly diminished. What am I going to do? I can't hide forever. No, Adam agreed, you can't. But we need evidence, proof of what they're doing. Otherwise, it's your word against theirs. We, Rebecca asked, looking up at him. Adam's blue eyes met hers steadily. Yes, we. I'm not about to leave you to face this alone, Miss Nelson. Rebecca, she corrected softly. Please call me Rebecca. A small smile touched his lips. Rebecca, then. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Rebecca spoke again. You mentioned you were tracking missing Army supplies for a friend at Fort McDermott. Are you with the Army? Adam shook his head. Not anymore. I served during the War Union Cavalry. Afterward, I drifted west, eventually settled here, started a small cattle operation. He paused. My friend is Captain James Sullivan. We served together. He's been trying to track down supplies going missing from the fort for months. And you think Sheriff Daniels and Mayor Harris are behind it? I suspected someone in Winnemucca was involved, Adam said. Now I know who. What I don't know is who they're selling to or how big this operation is. Rebecca set down her fork. I think I can help with that. Before they caught me, I overheard them talking about a delivery date and a meeting place, Juniper Canyon, this coming Saturday. Adam's eyes sharpened with interest. That's 3 days from now. Yes, Rebecca said, and they mentioned a name, Blackwell or Blackford, something like that. They seemed afraid of him. Blackstone, Adam corrected grimly. Roland Blackstone. He runs mining operations all over the territory, but there are rumors he's involved in all sorts of illegal activities. If he's the buyer, this is bigger than I thought. Rebecca pushed her plate away, determination replacing fear. Then we need to stop them. We need to get evidence of the meeting, of the sale. Adam studied her face. It's dangerous, he warned. These men have already tried to kill you once, and they'll keep hurting others if they aren't stopped, Rebecca countered. I was brought up to believe that standing against wrongdoing is our moral obligation, Mr. Jameson. A slow smile spread across Adam's face. You're a surprising woman, Rebecca Nelson. Rebecca felt heat rise in her cheeks at the admiration in his eyes. I'm just doing what's right. Well, if we're going to catch these men, we have some planning to do, Adam said, rising from the table. But first, Diego brought something from town that might interest you. He crossed to a trunk near the door and pulled out a bundle wrapped in brown paper. My hand has a sister who works at the boarding house. She was about your size, so he borrowed some clothes for you. Rebecca accepted the package gratefully. Inside was a simple blue calico dress, undergarments, and even a hairbrush. This is. Thank you, she said, deeply touched by the thoughtfulness. There's a stream behind the cabin, Adam said. It's private enough if you'd like to bathe. I'll keep watch to make sure you're not disturbed. Rebecca nodded, clutching the bundle to her chest. The prospect of washing away the grime of the cellar was almost overwhelming. I'd like that very much. The cold stream water was invigorating, washing away not just the dirt but some of the lingering fear from her ordeal. Rebecca scrubbed herself clean, washed her hair, and changed into the borrowed dress, feeling renewed. When she returned to the cabin, Adam was at the table, map spread before him. Feel better? He asked, looking up. Like a new woman, Rebecca said, running the brush through her damp auburn hair. What are you looking at? Maps of Juniper Canyon, Adam explained. If we're going to catch them in the act, we need to know the terrain. Rebecca moved to stand beside him, examining the map. Their shoulders nearly touched, and she was suddenly acutely aware of his nearness, of the clean masculine scent of him. She forced her attention back to the maps. Here's where I think they'll meet, Adam said, pointing to a spot where the canyon widened into a small valley. It's accessible by wagon but hidden from the main trail. Rebecca nodded, trying to focus. How will we get evidence? We can't exactly walk up and ask them to confess. Adam's mouth quirked in a half-smile. No, but we can document the transaction. I have a friend in Carson City, a federal marshal. If we can get proof, he can bring in men we can trust to make arrests. How long would that take? Rebecca asked. 2 days to reach him, another 2 back with reinforcements, Adam calculated. Which means we need to delay Blackstone and the others somehow after we get our evidence. Rebecca frowned. That seems risky. It is, Adam admitted, but we don't have many options unless. He trailed off, thoughtful. Unless what? Adam tapped the map. Unless we bring in Captain Sullivan from the fort. He's only a half-day's ride from here, and he has the authority to make arrests for theft of Army property. Rebecca brightened. That sounds much better. Could Diego ride to the fort today? Adam nodded. He's already saddling up. I told him to be ready just in case. Rebecca found herself smiling at his foresight. You're good at this. Had some practice, Adam said cryptically, rolling up the maps. Now we need to prepare you for what's ahead. Can you ride well? Well enough, Rebecca said. I grew up riding in Pennsylvania, though I haven't had much chance since coming west. And shoot? Adam asked, his expression serious. Rebecca hesitated. My father taught me to use a rifle for hunting, but I've never shot at a person, Adam finished for her. Let's hope you won't have to, but I'd feel better if you were prepared. He moved to a cabinet and removed a Colt revolver, checking it before handing it to her. This is lighter than a rifle, easier to handle in a pinch. Rebecca accepted the weapon cautiously. I hope we won't need these. So do I, Adam said, his eyes grave. But hope isn't a strategy. For the rest of the day, Adam taught Rebecca how to handle the revolver, how to load it, aim, and fire. They practiced behind the cabin, using tin cans as targets. By evening, her arm was sore, but she could consistently hit what she aimed at. As dusk fell, they returned to the cabin. Adam prepared a simple but hearty stew while Rebecca set the table, the domestic routine feeling strangely comfortable despite the circumstances. Over dinner, their conversation drifted from their plans to more personal matters. Rebecca told him about growing up in Philadelphia, about losing her father to pneumonia and coming west to support her widowed mother. "You miss the city?" Adam asked. Rebecca considered the question. "Some things," she admitted. "The libraries, the concerts, but there's something about the West that speaks to me, the openness, the possibility." "The hardship," Adam added wryly. "That too," Rebecca acknowledged with a small smile. "But hardship builds character, my father always said." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Rebecca said softly. "What about your family?" Adam was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "Lost my parents young. Raised by my grandfather on a small farm in Kentucky. He died just before the war started after that." He shrugged. "The army became my family, I suppose." "And after the war?" Rebecca asked gently. A shadow crossed Adam's face. "Couldn't go back to Kentucky. Too many ghosts. Tried my hand at various things, lawman for a while in Kansas, trail boss for cattle drives. Finally decided I wanted a place of my own." He gestured around the cabin. "It's not much, but it's mine." "I think it's wonderful," Rebecca said sincerely. "You've built something real here." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their different paths. Adam cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "We should rest," he said, rising to clear the dishes. "Tomorrow will be a long day." Rebecca helped him clean up, their movements in the small kitchen a careful dance of awareness. When everything was put away, Adam again insisted she take the bed while he slept in the chair. "I can't keep taking your bed," Rebecca protested. "You're still recovering," Adam countered. "Besides, I've slept in worse places than a comfortable chair." Rebecca knew further argument would be futile. "Thank you," she said simply, retreating behind the curtain. As she lay in the darkness, listening to Adam moving quietly around the main room, Rebecca tried to make sense of the feelings stirring within her. She had known this man barely a day, yet she felt connected to him in a way she couldn't explain. Perhaps it was just gratitude for her rescue, or the intensity of their shared purpose. Or perhaps it was something more, something that both thrilled and terrified her. With these thoughts swirling in her mind, Rebecca finally drifted into sleep, dreaming not of the dark cellar but of wide, open spaces and blue eyes that truly saw her for who she was. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Adam was already up when Rebecca emerged from behind the curtain, his hat in hand and a serious expression on his face. "Diego returned from the fort," he said without preamble. "Captain Sullivan wasn't there. He's been called to Carson City on official business and won't return for at least a week." Rebecca's heart sank. "What does that mean for our plan?" "It means we're on our own," Adam said grimly. "At least until we can get word to my Marshall friend in Carson City." "Can Diego make that ride?" Rebecca asked. Adam shook his head. "His horse came up lame on the return from the fort." "Mine could make the distance, but then you'd be going, not staying here," Rebecca finished, understanding the dilemma. "And we need to be at Juniper Canyon tomorrow to get evidence." "Exactly." Adam set his hat on the table and ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "We could wait, let them make this sale and try to catch them at the next one. But who knows when that would be, or if there would even be another chance." Rebecca straightened her shoulders. "No, we need to stop them now." We'll stick with the plan, observe the meeting, gather evidence, then figure out how to delay them until help can arrive. Adam studied her face. It's riskier without military backup. Life is risky, Mr. Jameson, Rebecca said with a small smile, as I've recently learned quite thoroughly. A reluctant grin tugged at Adam's mouth. So you have, Miss Nelson. He became serious again. If we do this, you follow my lead, understand? No heroics. I promise, Rebecca said solemnly. Though the same goes for you. Adam nodded, reaching for his hat. Fair enough. Now, we'd better get ready. We'll leave before dawn tomorrow to get into position. Today, I want to go over the plan until we both know it by heart. They spent the day preparing, studying the maps, planning their approach, and gathering supplies. Adam showed Rebecca how to use a small brass spyglass he'd kept from his army days, explaining how they would document who was present and what changed hands. The most important thing is to stay hidden, he emphasized. If they spot us before the transaction, we lose our chance. If they spot us after, we could lose our lives. By evening, they were as ready as they could be. Diego had prepared food for them to take, and Adam had packed bedrolls and extra ammunition. They would ride out at 4 in the morning to reach their vantage point well before the meeting was set to take place. After a simple dinner, they sat before the fire, the weight of tomorrow's task settling over them. Adam cleaned his rifle methodically while Rebecca wrote a letter to her mother, just in case things went wrong. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" she asked quietly, sealing the envelope and setting it aside. Adam looked up from his work, having second thoughts. "No," Rebecca said firmly, "but I'm not naive about the dangers." Adam set down the rifle, his eyes serious in the firelight. "The right thing is rarely the easy thing," he said. "These men, they're not just stealing supplies. They're betraying their oaths, their community. The rifles they're selling could be used against innocent people. Someone has to stand against that." Rebecca nodded, warmed by his conviction. "You're a good man, Adam Jameson." He looked away, his jaw tightening. "I've made my share of mistakes," he said quietly. "Done things I'm not proud of. But this stopping these men, this is clear. This is right." Rebecca moved to sit beside him, drawn by the pain she sensed beneath his words. "We all have regrets," she said gently. "What matters is what we choose to do now today." Adam turned to look at her, their faces close in the firelight. Something in his expression made Rebecca's breath catch a vulnerability, a longing that matched her own confusing feelings. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Adam drew back slightly, clearing his throat. "We should get some rest," he said, his voice rough. "Tomorrow will be challenging." Rebecca nodded, rising to her feet. "Good night, Adam." "Good night, Rebecca," he replied softly. Sleep came fitfully that night, anticipation and anxiety chasing each other through Rebecca's dreams. When Adam gently shook her awake in the dark pre-dawn hours, she was almost relieved. They dressed quickly and in silence, Rebecca in sturdy pants and a shirt Diego's sister had included in the package, with her borrowed dress packed away for their return. Adam raised an eyebrow at her attire but said nothing, recognizing the practicality of it for their mission. The stars were still bright in the sky as they set out. Adam on his chestnut gelding and Rebecca on a steady gray mare borrowed from Diego. They rode in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts as they followed game trails that would lead them to Juniper Canyon without using the main roads. Dawn broke as they reached the hills overlooking the canyon, painting the landscape in shades of pink and gold. Adam led them to a sheltered position among a cluster of juniper trees that offered a clear view of the valley below while keeping them hidden. "The meeting isn't until noon," Adam said as they dismounted and secured the horses. "But I wanted us in position early, just in case." They settled in to wait, taking turns with the spyglass to watch the canyon floor. The hours passed slowly. They spoke little, sharing water and jerky from their packs, the tension growing as the sun climbed higher in the sky. It was just before 11 when Adam suddenly stiffened. "Riders coming," he whispered, handing Rebecca the spyglass. "From the east." Rebecca focused the glass, recognizing Sheriff Daniels and Mayor Harris leading a small wagon with two other men she didn't know. They pulled into the wide part of the canyon, just where Adam had predicted they would. "They're early," she whispered. "Setting up," Adam murmured, "making sure it's not a trap." They watched as the men unloaded several crates from the wagon, stacking them in plain view. One man remained with the wagon while the other three spread out, taking positions around the clearing. "They're nervous," Adam observed. "See how they keep checking the trail?" Rebecca nodded. "Blackstone must be someone they fear." Another hour passed before more riders appeared, 6 men on horseback, led by a tall figure in an expensive black coat despite the warm day. Even from a distance, Rebecca could sense the man's authority. The others deferred to him, keeping a respectful distance. "That's Blackstone," Adam whispered. "And those aren't miners with him, they're hired guns." Rebecca felt a chill despite the midday heat. "Can you hear what they're saying?" Adam shook his head. "Too far. But look, they're opening the crates for inspection." Through the spyglass, Rebecca could see Blackstone examining the rifles, nodding in approval. One of his men brought forward saddlebags, dumping out what appeared to be gold coins that glinted in the sunlight. "There it is," Adam said grimly. "The transaction, now we know for certain." Rebecca lowered the spyglass, her heart pounding. "We should go, we've seen enough." Adam nodded. "Slowly now, we don't want to draw attention." They began to back away from their position, staying low among the junipers. They had almost reached their horses when Rebecca's foot dislodged a stone, sending it tumbling down the hillside in a small cascade of pebbles. Below, heads snapped up at the sound. One of Blackstone's men pointed toward their position. "Run," Adam hissed, grabbing Rebecca's arm and pulling her toward the horses. They had just reached the animals when a shot rang out, the bullet splintering bark from a tree beside them. Adam shoved Rebecca toward her mare. "Go," he ordered, drawing his rifle and firing back toward their pursuers. "Head north, I'll catch up." "I'm not leaving you," Rebecca protested, fumbling with the reins. "Go now," Adam insisted, firing again. "That's the plan. If we're spotted, we split up. They can't follow both of us." Rebecca knew he was right. With one last desperate look at him, she swung into the saddle and urged the mare into a gallop, heading north along the ridge as more shots echoed behind her. She rode hard, her heart in her throat, expecting at any moment to feel the impact of a bullet. But after several minutes with no pursuit, she reined the mare into a small copse of trees and waited, listening intently, more gunfire in the distance. Then silence. Rebecca's hands tightened on the reins. Had Adam been hit? Should she go back? They had agreed on a meeting place if they were separated, an old line shack about 3 miles north of the canyon. But what if he couldn't make it there? Before she could decide, she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. Rebecca pulled out the revolver Adam had given her, her hand steady despite her fear. A moment later, Adam's chestnut burst through the trees, with Adam low in the saddle. Relief flooded through her until she saw the dark stain spreading across his left shoulder. "You're hurt," she gasped, holstering the gun and moving her mare alongside his. "Just grazed," Adam said through gritted teeth, though the pallor of his face told a different story. "We need to keep moving. They split up, some are following our trail." Rebecca nodded, forcing down her worry. "The line shack." "Too obvious," Adam said, swaying slightly in the saddle. "They'll check there. We need somewhere else to lay low until dark." Rebecca thought quickly. "The old mining claim," she suggested. About 2 miles east of here. I noticed it on the maps. Looks abandoned." Adam nodded, his face tight with pain. "Lead the way." Rebecca took the lead, setting a pace that was fast but not reckless, constantly checking behind them for signs of pursuit. Adam followed, growing more slumped in the saddle with each passing minute. The abandoned mining claim appeared after a grueling 30-minute ride, a small dugout set into a hillside with a collapsed wooden front. Rebecca helped Adam dismount, alarmed at the amount of blood soaking his shirt. "Inside," she said, supporting him as they made their way into the dugout. It was dusty and dark, but the roof was intact and it would hide them from view. "Take the horses around the back," Adam instructed weakly. "There's a small box canyon there. They'll be hidden and have water." Rebecca did as he said, unsaddling the horses and leaving them in the sheltered canyon with access to a small seep of water. When she returned, she found Adam sitting against the wall of the dugout, his face gray with pain. "Let me see that shoulder," she said, kneeling beside him and gently pulling away his bloodied shirt. The bullet had torn through the flesh of his upper arm, leaving an ugly furrow that was still bleeding steadily. It wasn't immediately life-threatening, but the blood loss was concerning. "Not just grazed," she said reproachfully, tearing strips from her petticoat to make bandages. "I've had worse," Adam said, attempting a smile that turned into a grimace. "That's not as reassuring as you might think," Rebecca replied, cleaning the wound as best she could with water from their canteen. She bound it tightly, hoping to stop the bleeding. "You need a doctor." "What I need is to get you somewhere safe," Adam countered. "Once night falls, we can make our way to Carson City. My friend there will still be there tomorrow," Rebecca interrupted firmly. "You're in no condition to travel further today." Adam looked like he wanted to argue but lacked the strength. "All right," he conceded. "We'll rest here until morning." Rebecca settled beside him, sharing the last of their jerky and water. The small dugout grew dim as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor. "You think they'll find us?" Rebecca asked quietly. "Not likely," Adam said. "We covered our tracks well, and they'll check the obvious places first." Rebecca nodded, drawing her knees up to her chest. "What happens when we reach Carson City?" "We tell my friend what we saw," Adam said. "With our testimony and his authority, he can bring charges against Daniels, Harris, and hopefully Blackstone too." "And then?" Rebecca asked, her voice soft in the gathering darkness. Adam was silent for a moment. "Then you'll be free to return to Winnemucca, to your teaching," he said finally. "Or to go wherever you choose." There was something in his tone that made Rebecca turn to look at him, though she could barely make out his features in the dim light. "And you? What will you do?" Adam shifted, wincing at the movement. "Continue with my ranch, I suppose." "There's always work to be done." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, filled with unspoken words and feelings neither was ready to acknowledge. Finally, Adam spoke again, his voice rough with exhaustion and something deeper. "You should try to sleep," he said. "I'll keep watch for a while." "You're injured," Rebecca protested. "You need rest more than I do." "I'll wake you in a few hours," Adam promised. "Please, Rebecca." Reluctantly, Rebecca settled down on the dirt floor, using her saddle blanket as a pillow. Despite her worry for Adam and their precarious situation, exhaustion soon pulled her into a fitful sleep. She woke to Adam's hand on her shoulder and the pale light of dawn filtering through cracks in the dugout's walls. "Someone's coming," he whispered, his face tense with pain but alert. Rebecca sat up quickly, reaching for the revolver. "How many?" "Just one, from the sound of it," Adam said, his own gun already in hand. "Stay back." They waited in tense silence as the hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped just outside the dugout. A moment later, a familiar voice called out. "Adam, Miss Nelson, It's Diego. Relief flooded through Rebecca as Adam lowered his weapon. In here, Diego, he called. The Mexican vaquero appeared in the entrance, his expression shifting from worry to concern as he took in Adam's pallor and bandaged shoulder. You are hurt, patron. I'll live, Adam said dryly. What are you doing here? How did you find us? Diego moved into the dugout, kneeling beside Adam to examine his wound. When you did not return last night, I followed your trail to the canyon. I found signs of shooting, then followed the tracks north. When I saw they led east toward the old Prescott claim, I guessed you might be here. Did anyone follow you? Rebecca asked anxiously. Diego shook his head. No, señorita, but there are men searching the hills, the sheriff and his men. They are saying you attacked them, that you are dangerous criminals. Adam snorted, then winced at the movement. Of course they are. Did you bring supplies? Diego confirmed. Food, water, and bandages in my saddlebags, and news the marshal from Carson City is in Winnemucca. Rebecca and Adam exchanged surprised glances. Marshal Collins is in town, Adam asked. Why? There was trouble with a stagecoach robbery, Diego explained, helping Adam to sit up straighter as Rebecca retrieved the saddlebags. He arrived yesterday. Hope surged in Rebecca's chest. This changes everything. If we can reach him, tell him what we saw, we'd need to get into town without being seen by the sheriff or his men, Adam cautioned. And in my condition, I'm not exactly inconspicuous. Diego spoke up. I can help. My sister's husband works at the livery. He can get a message to the marshal, arrange a meeting outside of town. Adam nodded slowly. That could work. He looked at Rebecca. But you should stay hidden. You're the one they really want, the witness to their original crime. Rebecca shook her head firmly. No, we do this together. I'm the primary witness, and the marshal needs to hear my testimony directly. Adam held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. All right, together. Diego helped Rebecca change Adam's bandages, the wound looking angry but not infected. With fresh bandages and some food in his stomach, Adam seemed stronger, though still pale from blood loss. We'll wait until dark, he decided. Diego, return to town and get word to the marshal. Tell him to meet us at Miners Creek crossing at midnight. Diego nodded, rising to his feet. Be careful, patron. The sheriff has many friends in Winnemucca. We will, Adam promised. Now go before you're missed. After Diego left, Rebecca helped Adam to his feet, supporting him as they moved outside to check on the horses. The day was warm, the sky a brilliant blue that seemed to mock their dangerous situation. You think the marshal will believe us? Rebecca asked as they returned to the shelter of the dugout. Collins is a good man, Adam said, easing himself back down against the wall. And he's been suspicious of Blackstone for months. With both of us as witnesses, plus the bullet in my arm as evidence of their reaction to being observed, I think he'll listen. Rebecca sat beside him, the close quarters of the dugout bringing them shoulder to shoulder. I keep thinking about what happens after, she admitted quietly. If we succeed, if Daniels and Harris are arrested, Winnemucca will need a new sheriff, a new mayor. The town will survive, Adam said. Communities are resilient. Yes, but... Rebecca hesitated. My position there may be untenable. Even if we clear my name, there will be those who believe the lies about me. Adam turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense despite his pain. You could start fresh somewhere else. Carson City has good schools, or Virginia City. Rebecca met his gaze. Is that what you would do? Start over somewhere new? I've done it before, Adam said softly. But this time... He paused, looking away. This time I have reasons to stay. The unspoken meaning behind his words hung in the air between them. Rebecca's heart quickened. Before she could respond, Adam continued, his voice rough with emotion. "When I found you in that cellar, I was just doing what any decent man would do," he said. "But these past days, getting to know you, your courage, your determination, your heart." He shook his head slightly. "I've never met anyone like you, Rebecca Nelson." Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. "Adam, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "This isn't the time or place. We're in danger. I'm half delirious from blood loss and you've been through a terrible ordeal. I wanted you to know that whatever happens next, whatever you decide to do, you've made an impression on me that won't fade." Rebecca reached out, her fingers finding his. "It goes both ways," she said softly. "You saved more than my life when you broke open that cellar door. You reminded me that there are good men in this world, men of honor and courage." Adam's fingers tightened around hers. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the simple connection of their hands saying more than words could express. The rest of the day passed slowly, the heat in the dugout building as the sun climbed higher. They conserved their water and food, knowing they had a long night ahead. Adam drifted in and out of sleep, his body fighting to heal while Rebecca kept watch, alert for any sign of pursuit. By the time dusk fell, bringing blessed relief from the heat, Adam was running a low fever. Rebecca helped him mount his horse, worried about his ability to make the ride to Miners Creek. "I'll be fine," he assured her, though his eyes were bright with fever and his hands unsteady on the reins. "We'll take it slow," Rebecca said, mounting her own horse. "It's only about 5 miles to the meeting point." They rode carefully in the gathering darkness, avoiding the main trails and keeping to the cover of trees whenever possible. Adam grew increasingly silent, focused on staying upright in the saddle. Rebecca kept close to his side, ready to help if he faltered. It was nearing midnight when they reached Miners Creek, a small stream cutting through a meadow surrounded by pines. They dismounted in the shelter of the trees, Adam leaning heavily against his horse. "No sign of the marshal yet," Rebecca whispered, scanning the clearing. "He'll come," Adam said, his voice strained. "Collins is a man of his word." They waited in tense silence, the minutes stretching endlessly. Rebecca's nerves were stretched to the breaking point, every sound in the darkness causing her to start. Finally, the soft sound of hoofbeats approached from the south. Rebecca drew her revolver, positioning herself slightly in front of Adam. "Easy," Adam murmured. "Let's see who it is first." A lone rider emerged from the trees on the far side of the creek, the moonlight revealing a tall figure with a marshal's badge glinting on his chest. "Adam," called a low voice. "That you?" "Here, Collins," Adam replied, stepping forward with Rebecca's support. The marshal dismounted, leading his horse across the shallow creek. As he drew closer, Rebecca could make out a weathered face with keen eyes and a neatly trimmed gray beard. "You look like hell, Jameson," the marshal said bluntly, taking in Adam's pale face and bloodied shirt. His gaze shifted to Rebecca. "And you must be the schoolteacher I've been hearing so much about, though the descriptions didn't mention you'd taken to wearing men's clothes." Despite everything, Rebecca found herself smiling. "Circumstances required adaptation, Marshal Collins." The marshal nodded approvingly. "So they did. Diego told me you have quite a story, something about witnessing Sheriff Daniels and Mayor Harris stealing army supplies." "Not just witnessing," Adam said grimly. "Rebecca here was locked in a root cellar and left to die for what she saw. And yesterday we observed them selling those supplies to Roland Blackstone." Collins's expression hardened. "Blackstone, eh? I've been trying to get something on that snake for years." He gestured to Adam's shoulder. "I take it that's their handiwork too?" Adam nodded. "They spotted us watching the transaction, shot at us as we fled." "We need to get you to a doctor," Collins said, noticing Adam's unsteady stance. "But first, I need details, everything you saw, exactly what happened." If I'm going to arrest a sheriff, a mayor, and one of the most powerful men in the territory, I need my case to be airtight." Rebecca and Adam took turns explaining everything from Rebecca's initial sighting of the men unloading crates at the Holloway farm to their observation of the transaction in Juniper Canyon. Collins listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions, but mostly letting them tell their story. When they finished, the marshal was silent for a long moment. "It fits," he said finally. "We've had reports of missing Army supplies across the territory for months, and Blackstone's mines have been suspiciously well armed despite the Army's efforts to restrict weapons sales to mining operations." "Will you help us?" Rebecca asked, acutely aware of Adam's increasing weakness beside her. Collins nodded decisively. "I've got 4 deputies with me in town. We'll move at dawn to arrest Daniels and Harris. Blackstone will be trickier. He's probably halfway to his headquarters by now." "What about us?" Adam asked, his voice faint. "You need a doctor," Collins said firmly. "There's a small ranch about 3 miles east of here belongs to the Wilsons. They're good people, and Martha Wilson was a nurse during the war. They'll help you while I deal with Daniels and Harris." Rebecca felt relief wash over her. "Thank you, Marshal." Collins tipped his hat. "Just doing my job, madam, and it sounds like you two have already done the hard part." He glanced at Adam with concern. "Can you make it to the Wilson place?" "He will," Rebecca said determinedly, helping Adam back to his horse. "I'll make sure of it." With directions from Collins, they set out for the Wilson ranch, Adam silent and slumped in the saddle. Rebecca rode close beside him, occasionally reaching out to steady him when he swayed. The Wilson ranch appeared as a welcoming glow of lamplight in the darkness. As they approached, a dog began to bark, and moments later a man appeared on the porch with a lantern held high. "Who goes there?" he called. "Friends sent by Marshal Collins," Rebecca called back. "We need help." "My companion is wounded." The man, Thomas Wilson, as they would soon learn, hurried forward, helping Adam from his horse. His wife Martha appeared in the doorway, immediately taking charge when she saw Adam's condition. "Bring him inside, Thomas," she ordered. "Miss, tie up the horses and come in. I'll need your help." The next hours passed in a blur as Martha Wilson cleaned and properly treated Adam's wound, declaring that while he'd lost blood and was fighting a mild infection, the bullet had passed cleanly through muscle without hitting bone or major vessels. "He'll recover," she assured Rebecca, who hadn't left Adam's side. "With rest and care." Rebecca sagged with relief, the events of the past days finally catching up with her. Martha gently led her to a small bedroom, insisting she rest while Adam slept under the influence of laudanum. "Marshal Collins will handle things now," Martha said kindly. "You've done your part, child. Rest." Rebecca slept deeply for the first time since her ordeal began, waking to bright sunlight and the smell of coffee. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Adam sitting at the kitchen table, pale but clear-eyed, his arm properly bandaged and in a sling. "Good morning," he said, a soft smile lighting his face at the sight of her. "Or rather, good afternoon." Rebecca returned his smile, relief washing through her at seeing him alert and so much improved. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Adam said. "Martha knows her business." Martha Wilson, a practical woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands, set a plate of food before Rebecca. "Eat," she instructed. "You both need your strength." As Rebecca ate, Thomas Wilson came in from outside, his expression excited. "Just got word from town," he announced. "Marshal Collins arrested Daniels and Harris this morning, caught them trying to flee. The whole town's in an uproar." Adam and Rebecca exchanged relieved glances. "And Blackstone?" Adam asked. Thomas shook his head. "No word on him yet, but Collins has sent telegrams to every law enforcement office in the territory with his description and charges. He won't get far, Martha said confidently, refilling coffee cups. That marshal's like a bulldog when he gets his teeth into something. Rebecca felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It's really over then. Almost, Adam said, reaching across the table to take her hand. We'll still need to give formal statements, testify at the trial. Rebecca nodded, her fingers tightening around his. Together. They remained at the Wilson Ranch for 3 days, Adam regaining his strength while news filtered in from town. Marshal Collins had appointed a temporary sheriff, and the town council was organizing elections for a new mayor. Most importantly, word had spread about what really happened to the schoolteacher, how she had been locked in a cellar to die, then helped expose corruption at the highest levels of the town's leadership. On the 4th day, Marshal Collins himself rode out to the ranch. Over coffee at the Wilsons' table, he shared the latest news. Blackstone's been apprehended trying to cross into California, he said with satisfaction. And we've recovered most of the stolen weapons. Your testimony broke open a conspiracy that goes back nearly 2 years. What happens now? Rebecca asked. There'll be a trial in Carson City, Collins said. Probably in a month or so. Until then, I'd advise you both to stay clear of Winnemucca. Daniels and Harris had friends who aren't happy about their arrest. Adam nodded, his hand finding Rebecca's under the table. We understand. After Collins left, Rebecca and Adam walked outside, finding a quiet spot beneath an old cottonwood tree. The afternoon was warm, the sky a perfect Nevada blue. What will you do now? Adam asked quietly. Return to teaching. Rebecca looked out across the landscape, considering. I'm not sure, she admitted. The school board sent word that my position is still open, but she hesitated. I'm not certain Winnemucca is where I belong anymore. Adam turned to face her, his blue eyes serious. Where do you think you belong, Rebecca? Her heart quickened at the question and all it implied. I'm still figuring that out, she said softly. But I know that these past days, despite everything, the danger, the fear, I've felt more alive, more myself than I have in a very long time. Adam reached up with his good arm, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. I told you before that I've made a habit of starting over, he said, his voice low. But meeting you has made me think about putting down deeper roots, building something that lasts. Rebecca leaned slightly into his touch. Something like what? A home, Adam said simply. Not just a cabin or a ranch, but a true home, with someone who shares my values, who challenges me, who makes every day an adventure even in the ordinary moments. His eyes held hers steadily. Someone like you. Rebecca's breath caught. Adam, are you? I know it's fast, he interrupted gently. Too fast, probably. We've known each other under extraordinary circumstances, but I know what I feel, Rebecca, and I think I hope you might feel something too. Instead of answering with words, Rebecca leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a soft, questioning kiss. Adam responded immediately, his arm sliding around her waist to pull her closer as the kiss deepened into something that felt remarkably like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Rebecca smiled up at him. Yes, she said simply, I feel something too. Adam rested his forehead against hers. I'm not asking for promises yet, he said. Just time to see if what we feel can grow into something lasting, away from danger and fear. Time sounds perfect, Rebecca agreed. And perhaps a proper courtship, Adam grinned, the expression transforming his face. I'd like that very much, Miss Nelson. 2 days later, with Adam's arm healing well and his strength returning, they bid farewell to the Wilsons and rode toward Adam's ranch. Diego greeted them with obvious relief, having kept the ranch running in Adam's absence. "The cattle are fine, patron," he reported. "And I fixed the loose boards on the north corral like you asked." Adam clasped his hand warmly. "You're worth your weight in gold, Diego. Thank you." As the days passed, Rebecca and Adam fell into an easy routine. She helped around the ranch where she could, learning about cattle and discovering a surprising affinity for ranch life. In the evenings, they talked for hours about their pasts, their hopes, their dreams for the future. Letters arrived from Winnemucca from the school board urging her return, from students missing their teacher, and finally one from her mother in Philadelphia. Responding to the letter, Rebecca had sent explaining everything that had happened. "She wants to come west," Rebecca told Adam one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Now that she knows I'm safe and—" She hesitated, blushing slightly. "Now that I've mentioned you in my letters." Adam raised an eyebrow, a smile playing at his lips. "And what exactly have you told her about me, Miss Nelson?" Rebecca's blush deepened. "That you saved my life, that you're a man of honor and courage, that I've developed feelings for you." Adam took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Serious feelings?" he asked, his eyes twinkling but with an undercurrent of genuine question. "Very serious," Rebecca admitted softly. Adam's expression grew solemn. "Serious enough to consider a proposal," Rebecca's heart leapt. Adam, he held up his hand. "Not today," he clarified. "It's still too soon, and we have a trial to get through first. But someday soon if you'll permit me to continue courting you properly." Rebecca smiled, leaning against his shoulder as the sky turned from gold to deep purple. "I would permit nothing less, Mr. Jameson." The trial came and went. Rebecca and Adam testified in Carson City about what they had witnessed, their testimony corroborated by evidence Marshal Collins had gathered. Daniels, Harris, and Blackstone were convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The conspiracy had been fully exposed, with several Army officers also implicated in the theft of supplies. When it was over, Rebecca and Adam returned to his ranch outside Winnemucca. The town had begun to heal, with a new sheriff and mayor elected and the cloud of corruption lifted. Rebecca had declined to return to the schoolhouse, instead accepting an offer to teach at the new school being built closer to the growing number of ranches outside town. On a crisp autumn day, 6 months after Adam had broken open the root cellar door and found a half-starved schoolteacher inside, he led Rebecca to a hillside overlooking his property. The aspens were turning golden, catching the late afternoon sunlight. "I have something to show you," he said, an unusual nervousness in his manner. Rebecca followed him curiously to where a cleared area revealed the beginnings of a foundation. "What's this?" she asked, though her heart already knew the answer. Adam took both her hands in his eyes reflecting the blue of the Nevada sky. "A home," he said simply. "Our home, if you'll have me." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears as Adam dropped to one knee before her, pulling a small ring from his pocket, a simple gold band with a single pearl. "Rebecca Nelson," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I fell in love with you in the most unlikely of circumstances. Your courage, your intelligence, your heart, they humble me every day. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Rebecca pulled him to his feet, framing his beloved face with her hands. "Yes," she whispered against his lips before kissing him. "Yes, with all my heart." They were married 2 months later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with Martha and Thomas Wilson, Diego and his family, Marshal Collins and Rebecca's mother, who had indeed come west and was thoroughly enchanted by both her future son-in-law and the frontier life, in attendance. As Rebecca and Adam exchanged vows beneath an arch of autumn flowers, she thought of the dark days in the root cellar when she had nearly lost hope. How strange and wonderful that the worst experience of her life had led her to the greatest happiness she had ever known. 5 years later, Rebecca stood on the porch of their home, a beautiful 2-story house with a wide porch and large windows that looked out over the ranch. Adam was in the yard, teaching their 4-year-old son Thomas how to ride his pony while their 2-year-old daughter Sarah watched from Rebecca's arms, clapping her hands in delight. The ranch had prospered under Adam's careful management, growing into one of the most successful operations in the region. Rebecca had continued teaching at the new school until Thomas was born, and now taught the children of neighboring ranches 3 days a week in a room they had built specifically for that purpose in their home. Marshal Collins visited regularly, always bringing gifts for the children and stories of his adventures enforcing the law throughout the territory. On his last visit, he had mentioned that he was considering retirement and had recommended Adam as his replacement, a suggestion that they were still discussing. As Rebecca watched her husband swing their laughing son down from the pony, she felt the familiar surge of love and gratitude that had become the foundation of her life. Adam looked up, catching her eye with a smile that still made her heart skip a beat. Later that night, with the children asleep and the house quiet, Adam and Rebecca sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the clear Nevada sky. "Happy?" Adam asked, his arm around her shoulders, his voice warm in the darkness. Rebecca leaned into his embrace. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully. Adam pressed a kiss to her temple. "Sometimes I think about that day at the Holloway farm," he said quietly. "How close I came to riding past, to not hearing you. But you did hear me," Rebecca reminded him. "You heard me and you saved me." "No," Adam said, turning to look into her eyes, his own reflecting the starlight. "We saved each other." And in the quiet Nevada night, surrounded by the home and family they had built together from the most unlikely of beginnings, Rebecca knew it was true. From darkness had come light, from despair, hope, from a chance encounter, a love that would last all their days. "We saved each other," she agreed, sealing the truth with a kiss that held all the promise of their shared future. "And we always will."